Hey guys, I'm Zell, and welcome to my guide to the second circle of the Pandaemonium raids, also known as P2S. Check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Zell where I live stream my raids, and if this guide ends up being helpful, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's first start with the prep. Here are the markers my group uses. The most important markers are the numbered markers on the little bridges, as they'll be used for a major mechanic. You'll also want to arrange light parties as well. Some notes on this fight: the boss has no positional markers, which means melees won't have to worry about positionals. This fight has a lot of movement, so casters will have a lot more work in terms of pre-positioning. This fight is also extremely dependent on being precise with your positioning for mechanics. I'll try to indicate landmarks on the stage that should help make sure you're in the exact right spot. Compared to P1S, the damage output on raid wides is much higher. Make sure to be using your mitigation tools like Addle, Feint, and Reprisal to help mitigate damage. Your healers will appreciate it. With that, let's get started with the actual fight. This fight starts with Murky Depths, a moderately damaging raid wide. Next, Hippocampus will cast Doubled Impact, which is a shared buster with an AoE. You can choose to use tank invulnerabilities or share. If sharing, make sure you both mitigate. Also make sure to bring this away from the party as it hits in a big circle. Sewage Deluge is a super hard hitting raid wide. Mitigate this and get ready for some healing. This will usher in the first sewer overflow phase. Like in the normal version, most of the arena will be covered in stinky sewage water. If you touch the water, you'll get a Dropsy debuff, which is a nasty dot which will kill you without healer supervision. It's also important to note which of the platforms will be made unsafe. The middle of the safe platforms I'll refer to as home base. It's good to make it a habit to pre-position here for mechanics. The boss in this phase will start with either winged or spoken Cataract. Here, the boss will show two separate facing indicators, one from his body, which will be the yellow marker, and his head, which will be the red marker. Depending on the cast, there will be two versions of this mechanic. If it's winged Cataract, that half of the arena behind the head will be unsafe. If it's spoken Cataract, that half of the arena in front of the head will be unsafe. The body will also emit a rectangular AoE. Getting hit by either AoE will earn you a damage down. There can be multiple platforms that are safe, however, just because you are on a safe platform doesn't mean that you can't get hit. Use the grates on the safe platforms to help you position from getting hit. Next up is Coherence, a combo mechanic where a tether will appear. Have the off tank take this tether to as far away from the party as possible where they will take a flare hit. Have the other players stack together with the main tank in front to soak a stack laser. The main tank must be in front because the person who gets hit first will take the most damage. Because the party takes two waves of damage, this is a great place to use cooldowns such as Harma and Liturgy of the Bell, which benefit most from the multiple hits. This deals a good bit of damage overall, so get ready to mitigate and heal. Following this is another Murky Depths. Then the boss will cast Ominous Bubbling, which will set up two stack markers on the healers, which will resolve later. Then, at the same time, the head will face one of the platforms. Hippocampus will slam down on that platform, knocking everyone back. I recommend everyone using their knockback mitigation here. To resolve the healer stacks, have group 1 be on the platform where the boss is pointed towards, and have the other group on the bridge next to it. This will allow both stacks to maintain melee uptime. Next is Predatory Avarice, which will mark a tank, healer, and a DPS with a debuff. The tank and DPS debuff will create a giant AoE which will knock back anyone it hits. The healer debuff will create a shareable AoE. This will resolve after the next mechanic, which is another winged or spoken Cataract. To resolve this combo, move to the safe spot for the Cataract cast. As soon as the cast finishes for Cataract, have the debuff tank move relative left facing the boss as far as possible, and have the DPS move relative right facing the boss as far as possible. After this, the arena will drain and return to its original form. The boss will cast Channeling Flow. Arrows will appear underneath everyone, kind of like the ones in Emerald Weapon. To resolve this, have everyone face their arrows into the boss and line yourself up using the platforms. Unlike Emerald Weapon, you need someone with an arrow to catch your forced arrow movement. If no one catches you, you'll go flying off into the wall and immediately die. However, if you are too close, you'll kill each other on impact. If both players place themselves behind the platform walls, you'll be far enough to not die on impact. Use the debuff timer to help you know when exactly to disengage and be in position for the dashes. Following this will be another doubled impact, which is then followed by a Murky Depths, and finally another Sewage Deluge. Remember, this raid-wide hits really hard, so get ready to mitigate this and heal. This will usher in the second Sewer Overflow phase. This time the boss will start with another Shockwave. Use your knockback immunity. Now comes the trickiest mechanic and where many Party Finder parties will fail. Welcome to Kampeos Harma, also known as Limit Cut. The boss will assign sets of numbers to all players in the party and then go untargetable. People have different ways of recognizing which set of numbers they get. I think it's easiest to go by tethered and untethered, but some people have told me that they like seeing the colors on the markers or even the shape of the dice numbers. Use whatever works for you. I'll be referring to them by tethers. Just as quick reference though, tethered players have blue numbers and square dice indicators. Untethered players have purple numbers and triangular dice indicators. The way this works is that the boss's body will dash at the tethered players sequentially. The untethered players will get slammed with giant circular AoEs sequentially. Each of these hits puts up a physical vulnerability up debuff, meaning that getting hit more than once by any of the mechanics will instantly kill you. Anyone who dies prematurely will make it so that the dash or AoE that was supposed to hit you will then hit a random party member and likely kill even more people. There isn't a lot of time to get to your spot, and because one of the platforms will be stinky, you can get unlucky and have to move quite a bit. I recommend moving to the home base platform early and using sprint to help mitigate this problem. The positioning here is also incredibly tight, especially for the tethered players. However, the stage provides some landmarks that will help. For the untethered numbers, they must move to their corresponding markers on the bridges. The tethered players will have to organize themselves with the odd players across the boss and the even players on the same platform. If you are the tethered 1 or 2, move to this corner of the grate on the platforms. If you are 3 and 4, move to the far corner of the platform. Then, as the dashes are executed, swap places. This will make sure that both players will avoid the giant AoE the untethered players are taking, and that no players will get hit by more than one dash. This mechanic isn't super complex, but the speed at which each player needs to recognize their proper position, combined with how lethal mistakes are, means that this will be a significant prog point. Again, use whatever indicator works best for you. One last note about Limit Cut, I suggest people to hold their 4-minute buff/burst windows until after Limit Cut, as it goes untargetable not long after the 4-minute mark. Hopefully you survive this, and then you'll see another doubled impact, which is then followed up by Murky Depths. This will then be followed up by Channeling Overflow. Again, arrows will appear with a debuff. However, this time players will either have a 13-second debuff or a 23-second debuff. If you have the 13-second debuff, organize yourself so that you'll Neum down a bridge to another player. If you have the 23-second debuff, you'll be targeted with an AoE, which you'll need to spread out for. The safest way to handle this is to have 2 players with the AoEs go on either side of the stinky platform. This allows for the most room away from the people with the arrow debuffs. You can also position on the same platforms as the arrow people, but it can be a little less safe. It does mean less movement for caster uptime, however. After the first set of debuffs and arrows go off, the 2 groups will swap. The early debuffs will then have to spread out, and the later debuffs will have to position themselves to Neum. Because the group will be spreading out but also taking multiple big hits of damage, it's a good idea to have big shields and regens before everyone starts to move out. After that will be another Cataract cast, and this will end the Sewer Overflow phase. This next set of mechanics are all things you've seen before, however, it'll be in combination with each other where they will all resolve at the same time. The boss will cast Predatory Avarice, putting debuffs onto 3 players. Then the boss will use Disassociation, and then it will cast a Winged or Spoken Cataract. These will resolve at the same time, so let's break it down. Predatory Avarice will force the party to stack with the exception of the tank and DPS player who have the debuff. They can't be too close to each other or the party, or their knockback will kill other players. However, because of Disassociation and the Cataract cast, the available safe stage has been reduced greatly. So, to solve this, identify who has the debuffs. Then go to the safe side for Disassociation, and then find which platform is safe for the Cataract. The party will then stack as close as possible on this corner of the platform's grate. We have the DPS player go into the corner, and the tank stand as close as possible to the wall and the disassociation AoE. This way the stack is far enough from the debuff players, and the debuff players won't knock back anyone. This next section of the fight can be kind of panicky as the mechanics happen one after another in quick succession. It will also require a lot of burst healing and mitigation, so healers be ready to use some major cooldowns. The boss will cast another disassociation. Here, have the party stack up in preparation for the next mechanic. We used marker C here because the other side is being hit by disassociation. This will be the setup for the next cast Sewage Eruption, which will then drop baited AoEs under every party member, so stack up and move together around the boss as a group. This will then be immediately followed up by Tainted Flood, which will force the party to spread out. I recommend ranged players stay on the side where you rotated towards during Sewage Eruption, and have the melee players, including the tanks, move back towards where you came from. By this point, the disassociation AoE will have gone off, so you'll have more space to work with. While Tainted Flood is resolving, Coherence will be cast. The off-tank needs to quickly take the tether and move away from the group, and the rest of the party needs to stack on the opposite side of the stage with the main tank in front. This can be a little chaotic, but hopefully with the movement from before, the off-tank is already in a good position to put the tether away, and most of the group is already close together to stack. This is then followed up by another doubled impact. And another Murky Depths. And finally, another Sewage Deluge. It is actually important to not over-mitigate this particular one because you won't have them for the next section where mitigation is even more important. You'll still want about 30% total mitigation here as a team. This will usher us into the final sewer overflow phase of the fight. Another warning for healers here. This next set of mechanics have a lot of burst healing that is required. Everyone should be helping out mitigating here, or you will die and healers will be rightfully mad at you. Week 1, many groups were using LB3 to survive, however, as players get better gear and are better about mitigation, I don't think this will be required. The boss will start this phase by casting Channeling Overflow. As always, look at your debuff timer and note whether you are going first or last. While the debuffs are ticking down, the boss will also cast Coherence. The tank with the longer debuff timer will need to take the tether as far away from the group as possible. The players with the first set of arrows should get to their spots, but everyone else who have the second set of arrows need to stay on home base. This means standing on one of the corners to avoid getting run over by the Numers. Remember to let the tank take the tether before people move out to the corners, otherwise the tank won't be able to get the tether and you'll all die. Then the Coherence Flare and the laser stack will go off. Remember to keep the main tank in front because they will take the most damage. Then the second set of arrow players will then have to move out and get ready to resolve their debuff, while the first set of players need to avoid getting hit. After a short break, the boss will cast Disassociation and cut the arena in half. Prepare for the upcoming Sewage Eruption cast by stacking the party to give yourself as much room as possible to move. I recommend moving as close as possible to the Stinky platform. This hopefully gives you enough room to bait the AoEs while avoiding the Disassociation hit. Now we are at the home stretch and the boss will repeat mechanics that you've seen before. Hippocampus will cast Ominous Bubbling and Shockwave. Use your knockback mitigation and remember to stack in your light parties. This will then be followed up by another doubled impact. And the boss will then cast 2 more Murky Depths. Finally, the boss will cast another Sewage Deluge, which will serve as the enrage for the fight. That takes us to the end of P2S. I hope this guide was helpful. Let me know how it worked for you guys, and I'll be working on my P3S guide, and I'm looking forward to seeing more people clear this fight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.